Greetings and salutations, and welcome to episode 231 of Ref the District. I'm Nathan Perry. That's the Stoner, and that's Trev.
What up?
Here, we will be kind of following the draft along. Washington Wizards pick 6, so we're kind of interested in that. Stoner, before we get anywhere near the topics for the day, I mean, we're going to talk the draft some probably towards the end, especially, but you have a streak going on. You're on a bit of a heater for picking who the Washington Wizards will pick. I think since Kispert,
that's true,
that you've been right about exactly who they're going to pick.
Not who I want them to pick.
No, yeah, but who they're going to pick. Save us all the trouble and just tell us who the Washington Wizards are going to pick, and then we'll pin that and save it for the conversation towards the end of the show. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm probably going to get myself in a little bit of trouble this year because all the signs point to Ace Bailey, and they may even have to trade up for him. I mean, seriously, he's the betting favorite. He's minus money right now, right? That's how big of a favorite he is to go to the Wizards at 6 or maybe higher. But I don't see it. I think it's a lot of smoke screens, and I don't think he's going to be there if they sit back at 6. I'm going with Trey Johnson, the guard out of Texas, who will be a good player. I really like Trey Johnson quite a bit. I just don't think it's going to be Ace Bailey, just because he seems to be a little bit of a me guy already.
Sure, canceling workouts and whatnot.
Right. But it all could be just because Washington has told him we're gonna take you. The rumor is that he's only going to go to 3 teams, or he only wants to go to 3 teams, and the Wizards are one of them.
Yeah, 6, 7, and 8. By the way, pick 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah, and he also said, or the rumors are out there that he had a last-minute workout with an undisclosed team, and people of note, not just people like me out there, people of note have said it was with the Wizards. So we'll see. But I'm going with Trey Johnson.
There you go, Trey Johnson. Trey Johnson. Now we just saved you all the trouble. Don't worry, Jared. We are going to be talking Commanders, and now that we've kind of gotten the NBA stuff not out of the way, because when the pick happens, like I said, it'll be something that we will discuss here, because we do ref the district, even though you guys have largely spoken with your views that anything not Commanders isn't nearly as fun. But don't worry, in the cool down, we're going to manage some of those expectations for the Commanders, because people getting pretty lofty with their expectations. So what happens if Washington doesn't meet those expectations? We're going to be going over that in the cool down. For the game, it's a fan favorite, viewer favorite, the would you rather, this or that returning. I wish I kind of would have remembered the NBA draft was on tonight, because this is one of our viewers' favorites things that we do in the off season. And I put it on a night where maybe some people will be tuned out because they will be watching the NBA draft. But who schedules a draft on Wednesday? But that's going to be the game. And then we're going to be warming up with get in line defense. Do we have some trouble in the trenches? Washington Commanders were ranked 4th in our NFC East position. We're going to be talking all things defensive line here in the warm-up. But what I need you to do is I need you to hit that like button. I need you to be subbed up to the channel. I need you to share this on whatever social media platforms you enjoy, so that way other people can join the conversation, as we're live every Wednesday here on YouTube and Facebook. We appreciate talking with our people. And as you get to join the conversation live for, like I said, with the this or that section, if you have one that you want us to pause it and pick between 2 different things, and we get that one, hashtag this or that, and put down your situation. More on that later. Let's get into this defense. Now, Stoner, you and I were in consensus that the Washington defensive line was last. Now, we might have squabbled a little bit over 1, 2, and 3, largely because you didn't want to give credit where credit's due with the Philadelphia defensive line. But now we need to hear from Trev. How do you rank these defensive lines? And is Washington a distant 4th, or are we trying to inch our way closer into that dominant category?
Oh, wow. let's say we're third, just because Dallas lost a lot. I mean, they still have DeMarcus Lawrence, but he's not producing as much. It's a deep line that's not really where he played. I'll go Dallas last, us third, just because we do have Deron Payne, who has shown that he's worth the money that he signed for. He can get double digit sacks. He's a really good player. Then we got some vets like Eddie Goldman and Carl Davis and Sheldon Day in there. A lot of practice squad guys. We've got Kinlaw and Jeff Wise and some role-playing guys. And Kinlaw the starter, but Jeff Wise and Jacob Martin and all those other guys are role-playing guys. And we're still waiting to see if Johnny Newton's going to be what we thought he was, drafting him in the second round. So just by paper stats, third. Second, I'm going to go the Giants. Just because they've got, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, say what you want about him, he's still a threat. Dexter, big sexy Lawrence right there in the middle, stuffing the run. So that's already three better players than the two teams I've said combined on the defensive line. If you want to add Abdul Carter there, he might show up in the line every once in a while. That's pretty scary too. So there's that. And then I'm going to go with Philly just because they have all them big boys up there. They had Jalen Carter, that Williams guy who left to New England. He was nice. Who else right there in the middle?
Jordan Davis.
Davis, yeah, big guy right there. A lot of their backs come down to that line too. So Philly, they won the Super Bowl. They won the Super Bowl with that defensive line. They won a lot of games with that defensive line. So Philly first, Giants second, Washington third, and Dallas fourth.
I was surprised that there were a lot of Philly fans, Eagles fans, that jumped into our comment section on the video that they were really praising that Giants defense. And they really thought that since they lost a few guys off of their line, like you talked about.
Graham retired, Sweats moved off.
Yeah, that's right.
Milton Williams signed the biggest contract in Patriots history. So that to me is something, because you know how Eagles fans are. They're very defensive about everything. And for them to be like, we got to give a lot of credit to that Giants defensive line. But in terms of Washington, I think it's their biggest weakness on this team. And coming into the offseason, it was their biggest weakness. And I don't think they did enough to address it. And you can say what you want, that Javon Kinlaw's this and all those guys you mentioned, Trev, the Dietrich Wises of the world and Days and Davis. And I mean, they are role players. That's exactly what they are. And you can't expect them to do too much. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on Joe Witt Jr. to be able to trick up this defense to stop the run.
Yeah.
Because they were 30th in the league in stopping the run. Now, these other teams weren't good either in stopping the run. Like the Cowboys were 29th stopping the run. But when you're 30th and what you do to that line is you lose your top sack guy in Fowler, you lose one of your best tackles in Jonathan Allen, and you replace those guys with Dietrich Wise and Javon Kinlaw. I just don't see how it can be so much better than what they were. So that scares me a little bit. And because, I mean, if you turn around and look behind you, I think Saquon Barkley's still running against that Commanders defense.
Yeah.
And they didn't do anything that's going to, that they addressed to say, we got to stop that dude.
They did it by committee. They went and got a bunch of Jags and role-playing guys and did it by committee, but like
that's usually not a solution.
No, it's not. Not on the defensive side of the ball, not on the line. Running backs, yeah. Wide receivers, yeah. But defensive line, because the two teams I named stars on their defensive line. I didn't name practice squad guys. Those are all stars.
Trev, I got in a bit of trouble because I mentioned how Washington is fourth, not just because statistically they're there, but also because they don't have a big name. Now we got some great names here in chat, by the way. I'm going to Locked On Law, JG, Mike, Trevor in the house, Jared, Yam back in action. Deluxe is here too. Uptown Dre, Mark, all joining the conversation live here. But JG called me out in our comment section because I was not pro signing a big name. But I did knock Washington for not having a big name. But it wasn't just the big name thing. Stoner, you mentioned how close Dallas and Washington were in the rush defense, but they weren't nearly as close when it came to the pass defense. You're talking Dallas was 3rd in sacks and Washington a respectable 11th. So it's not like it was not like they were embarrassed with the sacks. They had great pressure numbers. They did not have great finishing numbers. And that was a bit of a difference maker for them. And when you're talking about difference makers, Micah Parsons might be the best defensive lineman in the NFC East. Is there an argument? I mean, do you put Jordan Davis? Do you put
Dexter Lawrence there?
Dexter Lawrence? Do you put
Dexter Lawrence above him?
This to me wild because Micah Parsons to me is a guy who, and maybe it's because you can line him up you can line him up on the left end, the right end. You can line him up as linebacker. You can put him inside. You can make him. He is just a special player to me, and that's why I personally think that he is the best defensive lineman in the NFC East, and that gets Dallas the push over Washington to me.
And you can't tell me that if they did sign a big name, for example, if they signed Lawrence, right, or they signed Micah Parsons, which they may do in a couple of years, you can't tell me that's not going to help the defensive line.
Sure.
Now they're big names. They're going to cost a lot of money if you did that, and that may not be the best thing for your roster in terms of being able to fit everybody in the salary cap. But they're big names because they make big plays and they do big things, right? So you can go out, as Lockdown here says, they went out and signed 6 guys who do nothing but set the edge and stop the run. They do, but they don't do it very well.
Yeah.
They're average at it. And maybe that's what Joe Witt Jr. wants. Maybe that's just the construction of this defense that they want, because it's not like they didn't have money to do it. It's not like they didn't have draft picks to do it, but they didn't do it. And they just did sign these guys that are really just a bunch of no names, average players. So we'll see. Like I said, I think there's a lot of pressure on Joe Witt Jr. this year to be able to stop your biggest concern, your biggest rival is the Philadelphia Eagles run game. That's the biggest thing that you're concerned about that is going to get you over the hump. That's what stopped you from going to the Super Bowl, was the Philadelphia Eagles run game. And I don't feel that they addressed it well enough. That's just me, but we'll see. A lot of pressure on Joe Witt Jr.
Yeah, it's going to be by committee. It's going to be, but I mean, we didn't really expect Dante Fowler to have double-digit sacks.
Yeah.
I mentioned the pressure rate was really good for Washington, and it was just the finishing that they need help with, and with the help in the defensive backfield, with draft pick, with a couple signings there, with a healthy Marshawn Lattimore, potentially a couple of those pressures turn into sacks, and that makes those numbers look a little bit different. But maybe they get a difference maker here. Locked on Law saying he read that the Commanders are trading Terry McLaurin to the Steelers for TJ Watt. That is insanity. But
I'd take it right now.
I know you would. You're Mr. Terry McLaurin's not wide receiver 1.
I'd have to think about that one. And I know it was out there, but I know it was by a national writer, but it wasn't that they were doing that. It was just,
it was like a minicamp holdout speculation.
Yeah, it was like the best fit for where these players would end up. And this is kind of where it was.
Terry's for the Raiders and TJ Watt's for the Commanders.
Yeah. Would you do that, Nathan? Would you make that trade?
Man, it
How
is.
old is TJ Watt? I mean, TJ Watt's a Hall of Famer.
Right? Yeah, he is
a Hall of Famer. Let's not get crazy here.
We don't have to go deep diving and pull up crazy
no,
stats.
The guy is insane. He's better than his brother.
But how old is he? That's my question. I hadn't looked into it because it was just one of those things. I'm like, oh my God.
He's only been in the league 7 years. So he's just 30. Over 30 years old. He'll be 31 this season.
So he's like a year and a half older than McLaurin.
Make it happen right now.
But if you would look
All-Pro, 7-time Pro Bowl.
Look at his injury history compared to McLaurin. McLaurin has 0 injury history, 0. And TJ Watt has missed seasons.
No,
has
actually,
he missed a full season?
That's the crazy part. I'm actually looking at it. I think that there might be an overblown narrative on his injury history. Last 2 seasons, he's played a full season. He's played all 17 games.
Go get him right now.
These last 2. Let's see, where are his sack rate? So he has 11.5 sacks, so a down year for him. 19 sacks the year before, playing all 17 games. The year before last, 2022, 3 years ago, I guess. Yeah. That's where he missed the most games. He missed 7 games that year. Okay. Or I think that was 7 games. That was the first one. But then it's like 15 games, 2 16 games, and a 15 game. Okay. So really, it's only the 1 year that he got injured. Yeah. And so it might be overblown. I think you have to. Like if you're telling me straight up Terry McLaurin for I think we have to give up draft picks because of TJ Watt is that insane. So
go do it right
now. That's again insanity. So we're gonna move off of it here. Deluxe saying stopping the run will aid the pass rush. This is also true. 3rd and 7 is much different to defend than 3rd and 2nd. D-line got bigger to face O-lines in the East. That's all true, Deluxe. And this is something, I know that the conversation in the chat was that Washington, or that we were, only talking about the pass rush, which isn't true. Stoner, you brought up the 30th ranked rushing defense. Mm-hmm. And but all the stuff that they're doing, it's experimental, I guess is the word. It's right. We don't know if it's going to work. And so I can't rank, even if they got a difference maker, all the offensive line with Tunsil, there's only so much credit you can give that. You can't, because you don't know how that player is going to do here. You try to approximate what an average season would look like for that individual. And so I don't know that, Washington is really all that improved, even with all the run stoppers they're going to do. But I will say there's going to be a surprise double-digit sack person on this team.
Yeah. I mean, there basically has to be. Is there any team that doesn't, that doesn't have a double-digit sack guy at some point? Right? They usually do. But it is, I can't stress enough that it is very confusing to me that they did that. They just kind of completely ignored their biggest weakness. And maybe you can see what they did. And Lockdown put out there that they got these 6 guys who do nothing but stop the run and set the edge. And that to me just kind of feels like a coping mechanism. If somebody tells you that, then you're gonna buy into it, that's what they did. Sure, that's what they did. But these guys aren't difference makers. And they need a difference maker on that defensive line. Nathan, what's the number 2 most important position on a football team?
Someone to get after the quarterback.
Right. And you don't have that guy right now. And if you're trying to make a run to get a ring, like Washington is definitely doing, they're the oldest team in the NFL, average age, the number 1 oldest team. So they're going for it. They're re-signing guys like Zach Ertz and Bobby Wagner and some of these older vets because they want to make this run at it. You got to have that guy on the edge to me. So that concerns me. They're a lot smarter than I am, Joe Witt Jr. and Dan Quinn and them. But I'm just worried that that's going to be what holds them back from getting to that next step.
I agree. It is hard to decipher that because it's not like we've had these guys for longer than 2 years where they can get some continuity. The defensive line has been more changeable and interchangeable than the offensive line in the past recent years. Like this defensive line is completely different than it was last year and then the year before that. Now, if these guys were around for 2 or 3 years together, then we might be able to tell and sit here and say, yeah, we're going to be able to do this, do that. If we added one piece here or lost one piece there, we still have these guys. But that's not what it's been the past few years. It's been different faces from the beginning to the end, because even in the middle of the season, we call up practice squad guys to help out the defensive line. So, like you said, Stoner, Joe Witt Jr. has some pressure. I don't know if it's a lot of pressure, but he definitely has more pressure than he did last year because it's not to our liking. It's not to our difference-making liking, but you did improve on the defense because you went and got a healthy Marshall Lattimore. You went and got a Jonathan Jones. You went and got Deatrick Wise. Some of these role-playing guys that are healthy and have done something in the NFL to where, they can still have a job today. But like you said, the pressure is on. If you can get all these different guys now, these many vets, many all-stars together and gel and be different, then we can give an opinion. But right now it's too many different phases to say that we've gotten better, at least for defensive line. And secondary, you can say it because clearly, just on paper, we're better than we were last
year. And I also think that Marshawn Lattimore is actually a big key to the run defense because Marshawn Lattimore is not the type of guy who's just going to kind of sit back and if they run his way, he'll kind of be around the ball. No, Marshawn Lattimore gets in there and gets his nose dirty, and he does actually like to set the edge a lot on these runs to his side. So him being healthy is going to really help the run defense if he can stay healthy. So I think he's a key to help them out as well, but we'll have to see kind of, again, how that turns out.
This is an insane stat coming from Deluxe here. Not comparing the defenses, Deluxe says. And it was a while ago, but a good example. 2000 Ravens defense was number one against the run. Who were their edges? Top guy had 10.5 sacks.
Was that T Sizzle? Was he there during that time in 2000 or was that too long ago? No, he was an edge guy, but that might have been too long ago for T Sizzle because that's 25 years ago, and he just retired 5 years ago. But the thing is, you're right. You don't necessarily have to have that guy. But if you're the 30th ranked against the run, you got to do something about it. And your biggest issue with the run was on the edges because your defensive edge was not doing a good job of setting that edge. There's a reason they let Dante Fowler go for $8 million or whatever he signed in Dallas when he gave you 11.5 sacks or whatever it was, double-digit sacks. And they let him go for almost nothing. Right? Remember he was tweeting? He was tweeting about how disrespected he felt. Obviously, the Commanders were not offering him a lot because he can't set the edge. And that's why they want to get rid of him. So, no, you don't need that guy on the edge for sure if you can stop the run. And at this point, this team has not proved that they can stop the run.
So my question here to end this particular segment is back on the pressure. On specifically, you said Joe Witt Jr. is under a lot of pressure this year to get this team to perform, which may or may not be true. I'm not sure how warm that seat is in DC for our DC.
Yeah.
But my question is for you two and our viewers right now, who player-wise is under the most pressure to perform?
Defensively
on the defensive line.
From the defensive line.
I got two. Deron Payne and Johnny Newton. Johnny Newton because we went out and got him second round to be this vicious beast that he was in Illinois. He gets hurt, rehabs, comes back. Yeah. Now we have a full healthy off season for Johnny Newton. See how that goes. And Deron Payne. Like I said, he had that 11.5 sack year, I think, which got him paid for us, but he was always in the shadows with Jonathan Allen. They were a duo. It was never Deron Payne first. It was always John Allen and Deron Payne. So now we're going to see if he can do it by himself pretty much as the veteran leader of that defensive line. I mean, there's some older veterans we have, but as far as it comes to this organization, he's the longest tenured defensive lineman I think we have right now. Is he? Now that I think about it.
Well, I mean, he's the longest tenured player,
yeah,
on the team, I believe, in terms of a draft pick. Maybe Tress Way got there before him, and I can't remember him and McLaurin.
Well, Tress Way wasn't drafted by the Commanders, anyways. If you're going by
I'm going by draft pick.
Terry McLaurin's got more on Deron Payne.
Oh, okay.
You sure?
Pretty sure.
I thought McLaurin was, but anyway, they're right there 1 year after each other. Maybe
but you know what? Y'all know what that's what I'm trying to say. He's the in that locker room. He's the veteran of the locker room defensive line of the ball.
Oh yeah.
So he's under a lot of pressure too because he's
and word is that he came into the OTAs motivated,
right,
in great shape.
Payne the year before, by the way.
Yeah, I thought Payne was the year before. So I think Payne's like the longest tenured Commander, at least draft pick. I'm pretty sure. I only got like 3 draft picks, I think, from the teens or whatever. But for me, I think for the biggest, most amount of pressure is Kinlaw, as I think somebody already said on here. JG said,
yeah, JG had gotten.
Oh, absolutely.
Jay with Payne.
You gave that man $15 million a year. You gave him a lot of money, right? Very controversial. He has not shown anywhere in his career that he's a $15 million a year player. Okay? He's not shown that yet. He has the potential. And the guy who signed him is the guy who drafted him.
Yeah.
So there's some trust there, right? But that's a lot of pressure to bring a guy in that a lot of people said that was not a good free agent signing, that much money for that guy who hasn't done much in his career. So I think there's a lot of. It was
on a prove-it-year deal and didn't prove it, but
but he still got paid. $15 a year, man. That's a lot of money for a guy who's done not a lot.
I have to agree with Kinlaw is probably going to be under the most pressure to perform because of the contract, because he's brought on to be the guy, right? He is replacing Jonathan Allen, who got $20 million a year over in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And you're expecting, you don't get even though he's $15 million a year, you don't get 3/4 of a Jonathan Allen out of that. You need the full Jonathan Allen effect out of Kinlaw.
Yeah.
Even though you're only paying him 500, even though you're paying him $5 million less a season. So there's a lot of pressure there. I do think that Johnny Newton, as Trev mentioned, is going to be under a lot of pressure. Second year, a lot of, he was hyped up by the team last year. I showed that he actually he had comparable stats and sometimes better stats than Deron Payne did last season with less snaps.
Yeah.
And so I expect big things from Johnny Newton this year. And I think if, much like, one of the guys who was before him, a second round pick, just if he continues not to perform at the level that people want him to, a lot of people are going to be very much on the outs when it comes to Johnny Newton.
Deron Payne, switching over to Payne as well, because I agree with both of you on the Johnny Newton pressure, right? And this team, even though it's not their draft picks, this team has shown no issues with cutting loose dudes who are high draft picks. If they know he ain't the dude, he ain't the dude. And last time I checked, no GM in the world bats 1,000, right? So somebody's got to be a bust. I don't know who it's going to be. So maybe it's Newton, but hopefully not. But moving over to Payne, we sometimes we forget how dominant he can be. It's been probably a couple of years since he's done it. And it hasn't. Payday. But the first year of his new payday, he was still dominant. He was still wreaking havoc. So I don't put it all on the payday. I know some people, you get G'd up and you kind of relax a little bit.
And you didn't get double-digit sacks ever again. So he got double-digit sacks, got paid, and then he's been good, but he's not been great. He got paid to be great.
You're right. You're right. I think that's fair. So there is some pressure on Payne as well because he is coming up on a contract as well, right? Yeah. I mean, he's got 2 more years, but correct me if I'm wrong, that last year has a very low salary cap hit, dead cap hit.
This is his last guaranteed money season. That's when people talk about him being in a contract year. He becomes very expendable, very movable after this season. So he wants to do what he can to get
Make
more
it hard.
guaranteed money. Yeah. Let me get more guaranteed money after another double-digit sack. Well, that's the pressure he's going to be putting on himself. And we talked about the defensive line getting pressure, and we talked about who we thought was going to be under the most pressure. But now I'm going to put these two under pressure as we're going to go over to this or that in the game. Would you rather, coming up here on Ref the District? Stay with us. Welcome to the game here on episode 231. I'm seeing that Dallas is on the clock right now, so the NBA draft underway. We'll kind of keep tabs on that. We'll talk about who the Wizards will be picking in the cool down time. So just stay with us if you're interested in that. We have a whole different conversation planned as well. Stoner already spoiled it for you, though. Trey Johnson's the pick. So if you wanted to save yourself some time and focus solely here on Ref the District, we'd appreciate that. And we also just happen to appreciate our man Alif here with the $5 super chat. And we're going to start off our game section here before we get to the this or that section with this question. I know it's way too soon, Alif says, but based on our current roster, I want your Super Bowl predictions now in June. I predict Commanders versus Texans. I love the Kool-Aid drinking here. 17-0 until we find out otherwise, gents.
Super Bowl, huh?
Yeah, man. Wow. That's
Super Bowl pick all the way here in June 25.
I probably won't give my prediction because I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to be called a hater and
Oh, but you'll make all of our Philadelphia fans excited.
I mean, how can you bet against Philly?
Easily.
I mean, they were the best team. It wasn't a fluke. They are strong in all areas. And unless they have injuries, why would you bet against them? So I would go Eagles.
Two words.
What?
Jaden Daniels.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I don't want to, argue against that. But I would go Eagles against the Los Angeles Chargers.
Ooh,
my God, Justin Herbert.
You are such a Herbert stan. It's gross.
Yeah,
it's gross. They're my team most likely to take a step back.
Jim Harbaugh. No, Jim Harbaugh is an excellent coach, and he's rebuilt that team into a run-first team
to take pressure off of your QB.
Exactly. Watch out for the Los Angeles Chargers.
I'm going to go Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, my goodness.
Even though we're going to get TJ Watt. Yeah, even though they're losing TJ Watt to us. But
Aaron Rodgers to Terry McLaurin in the Super Bowl? Oh, my goodness.
And then against who? I'm going to go ahead and say the Commanders.
All right, Trev. Thank you for saving me.
Because I want it to be a Terry McLaurin against Commanders Super Bowl. That would be just a headline in itself.
That'd be pretty fun if I'm not picking the homer team.
Yeah, I mean,
which I really want to do. But if you're putting $1 on this and you want to be realistic about getting money off of your dollar, one, you don't pick the Chargers. And sadly, you can't pick the Commanders. I mean, definitely put $5 on your Commanders if you're a betting person, because why not? The odds are fantastic for that. Bet responsibly, of course. I just want to throw that out there. But I would have to go. It's so hard this early on.
I know.
June is so early to be making these predictions. I liked the Rams last year. I thought that they were going to pull off the upset against Philly. Just didn't happen. Snow was too much, but I don't necessarily like them as much this year. I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills, finally getting over the Kansas City hump out there in the AFC. And on this side, I feeling maybe Detroit finally gets over there. They're keeping a lot of the same guys. I mean, they lost coordinators, but they had a lot of injuries there at the end. They put together a really solid team, and I just feel like maybe they finally get there, but maybe the Bills of the NFC and they're just a good team until the playoffs, and then they can't make it past there.
Bills and Lions. So somebody who's never won a Super Bowl is going to win a Super Bowl. That would be a good Super Bowl, I think. Bills and Lions.
It would be pretty exciting, and it would be a lot of, people would be watching, and they'd pick a team to cheer for because these are lovable losers. So that was a good question there, Alif. We appreciate the $5 super chat to get us going here in our Would You Rather section now. Now I've got a whole little thing. By the way, perfect picture. Thank you, the Commanders, for getting Commanders and Josh for getting this kind of thinking man pose going. That's going to be a weekly segment, by the way, not the Would You Rather, but the question of the day. If you happen to see that either out on Twitter or on our YouTube channel, Wednesdays is going to start having that come out as just kind of a nice little prompt for things. But let's get into the this or that. One of the prompts leading the way, pardon me, was the question, would you rather go 2-4 in the division, but sweep the Eagles, or go 4-2 and get swept by the Eagles?
I'll let you go first, Trev.
I'm going 4-2 because the division record matters the most in this sport. You can't make it to the promised land or even start your journey to the promised land with a bad division record. I know we got swept by the Eagles. That sucks, but when we meet them in the NFC Championship, when it counts, that's when we get the W's. 4-2. Yeah, 4-2.
I thought for a long time that I might go with the 2-4 as long as you have a much better record outside of that.
Right.
So because, the Eagles are the team, but it does come in context. What if the Eagles are missing all of their players every single time, because of injury or whatever, and that's the only team you beat? But you're right, Trev, that division record, that's your second tiebreaker, right? It's head to head, and then it's division record. So you're going to want to have a better division record almost regardless of what else you do. If you go 2-4, that's 6 of your 17 games. Even if you go 11-0, you could be 13-4, but ask Minnesota how that worked out for them when they won 15 games and still had to play a wild card game on the road, right? Because Detroit was so much better, or 14, whatever they won. Yeah. So I'm going to go with 4-2 just because of the in-division tiebreaker rules.
Sure. And I think that's fair. And Deluxe is right. It's not a fun question. And then continue to say 4-2 has to be the choice. Pluck Philly. Ja is saying neither. You got to pick. It's this or that. Would you rather? You have to pick. Yeah. Neither of these have to be bad, as Stoner alluded to. I mean, you could be a 10-win team and go 2-4. Right. But if you're telling me that we have a chance at being 12-win team, but we lost twice to the Eagles, 12 wins gets you a good spot in the playoffs there, and potentially still a home game.
I think if you're 10-7 overall, but both of these or either of these could be your division record. Well, 10-7 with a 2-4 division record, and you might not make the playoffs.
Exactly.
But 10-7 with a 4-2 division record, and there's a really good chance that you make the playoffs. I would go with the 4-2. Yeah. But I did want to think about 2-4 quite a bit.
JG here saying nothing is better than sweeping the Cowgirls. I'll just mute the Eagles fans. And this is going to go into it. So this one here we've been talking about rivalries. And we've been talking about how the Eagles might be growing in a rivalry with the Commanders because they've won the Super Bowl. We've seen some really good games against these two teams over the last couple seasons. And so that's why this is kind of where that split was. But here's the thing. Philadelphia fans, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I mean, we talk about you because you're always chirping at us. But I do not think about you all nearly as much as you all think about us, apparently, because
not even close.
Not even close. So it's just like, there's no brainer to me. Take the W's. I don't care about if the Eagles sweep us. I care about getting to the playoffs and making noise there.
And they got to wait all the way to the end of the season this year to even
start. There's going to be a lot of animosity coming from them. Yeah, it's going to be.
We don't play them till the last few weeks of the season.
Nobody took this one. This one was all that. Nobody took the 2-4 in the division. Not anybody. I didn't see anybody in our comment section. I didn't see anybody in our tweet, in our YouTube post. Nobody was taking 2-4. Everybody took the more wins, and I love to hear that. I love to see that because it is about getting the W. That's what's important. Let's move to our next one here. This was the prompt for this particular video. Promo out there. And then we had this one that was the video prompt, which is, who would you rather become a stud? Would you rather Josh Conerly or Trey Amos? This or that. This, Josh Conerly becomes a stud. That, Trey Amos becomes a stud. Obviously, both of them can. But if you can only have one, who would you rather become a stud?
Man.
All pros, Pro Bowls, all that good stuff. Being a legit stud. Nailed the pick. Who is it?
This is a tough one. All right, Trev, go for it.
Trey Amos.
Yeah.
And here's why. No offense. Linemen are expendable. There's always going to be a potentially stud offensive lineman every single draft. There is. And free agency. There is. Cornerbacks, not as much. Usually every draft, there's one or two ball hawks got to go get. Last year, it was Christian Gonzalez and somebody else, and we went the other way. This year, it was Trey Amos and probably Malachi Starks, probably the top two defensive backs. There was a Brian Branch that 1 year, stuff like that. You know, there are some studs that come out of a cornerback-heavy draft class or whatever, but offensive lineman, you can go get one. I mean, we did it before we drafted Josh. We went and got Laremy Tunsil. We got Trent Williams at one point. We had Charles Leno. You can always get a stud offensive lineman. We got Tyler Badass. We had who was the center before him that was good, but we let him go. Chase Roulier couldn't stay healthy. I mean, offensive linemen become studs like that, I think, faster than cornerbacks. So I'm gonna go Trey Amos just because you can go get an O-line stud anytime, whether it's draft or free agency. You're gonna have a harder time finding that in the defensive back room. So Trey Amos.
That is a tough one, man. It's a really tough one. I really haven't even come up with my decision even now. So I'm gonna have to kind of.
If you're trying to stall a little bit, Jaw and Jay both want Trey here and saying Trey Amos. Yam saying Conerly. A lot more riding on him, I think. Yam says not pretty, but lines win championships. Roger in the house here, and appreciate the shout out to get people to like this video. We always appreciate when you guys make sure and police each other that way. But Roger's saying Conerly because he protects the reason why we win. Yeah. But back to Jay here, stud cornerback over a stud right tackle.
I mean, I'm a trenches guy, right? I believe in that. I think that football is won at the line of scrimmage more times than not, and you have to build up your offensive line. However, he's a right tackle, not a left tackle. So I'm going to go with Trey Amos because if he does become that stud and Lattimore does pan out, right? Think about what you've got with the three corners that you're going to put out there. Sanistril has already proven himself that he is the real deal. And if what he can do in a pass-happy league against the quarterbacks that they're going to play, especially this year, when they got the Mahomes and Herberts and Nixes and Dax and Jalen Hurts and all these guys, Jared Goff, that's what you need. You need a shutdown corner more, I think, than you need a right tackle. If Josh Conerly could move to left tackle if they move on from Laremy Tunsil after his 2 years here. But I need Trey Amos to be that guy. Maybe it's just because their defense has been bad for so long and that I need the defense to step up the way the offense stepped up last year. Offense is top 5 already without Josh Conerly. I'm going to Trey Amos. I'd rather have him pan out to be the stud.
Come on, Nathan.
I'm going against you guys here. Stoner, you started off on the right track. You talked about being the trenches kind of guy.
Yeah,
you like the linemen on both sides of the ball and how important they are to winning the game of football. If he's a stud tackle, and there's been this potential discussion, right, that he starts off on the right, Larry Tunsil is, only got a few more years on contract, and he's north of 30. Maybe we go the Tristan Wirfs path, starting off on a right tackle, moving to be a stud left tackle. I mean, the guy, if he turns out to be a stud, we will be seeing Jaden Daniels highlights left and right. And to me, that's better and more exciting than whether or not Trey Amos becomes a stud, because we already know Mikey has high potential. Mm-hmm. He's played outside. We're going to get a chance to see him play on the inside. And Lattimore's there. You got Jones and Iggy, who are kind of rounding out a nice, solid, and so you can afford Trey Amos to kind of be okay. You don't want him to be Forbes or Benjamin St. Juice, but you don't have to have him become a Surtain, right? You don't need a Revis Island out there.
Yeah, we do.
But if you get a stud tackle, I can't believe Trev is trying to gaslight people into thinking you can just get offensive linemen any day of the week. They grow on trees.
Yeah, that was a little out of pocket.
That's a little bit much.
Bro, there's an offensive lineman that's a stud every draft.
You know where they're all taken? They're all taken in the top 10 picks.
That's what I'm saying.
Rarely do you find them.
Look, we're not picking top 10 and below anymore.
Never again,
guys. No, so that's why I don't have that mentality.
So that's my point. So why if you're never picking top 10 again, you're never going to get one of those top linemen.
You can go get Laramie Tunsil.
All right, how about let me cheat a little bit here? Okay, how about Amos is a stud and Conerly's just good? It doesn't mean he has to be a bust.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, this is the thing, right? This is both of these guys can be good. Why wouldn't I want if you're telling me one's going to be a stud and the other one's going to be good? I'm still taking the stud offensive lineman, and I'll take the good cornerback, because good cornerbacks come out the draft every year at all up and down the board.
Same with the O-line. So it really is kind of
no, it's not. Position. Trust me, I've looked at O-lines and where they were drafted, and the majority of good Pro Bowl linemen come in the first three rounds. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about lately there's been, Sauce Gardner, Surtain, those guys taken in the first. But if you actually look over the course of NFL history, there's been a lot of really good, true of linemen, I'll give you that. But Richard Sherman, he wasn't a first rounder.
That's fine.
So I'm telling you, I can't, to me, I'm taking the line. Absolutely. Hodag here sticking with me as well. Perfect answer. Conerly Jr. doesn't need to qualify as a stud to be consistently solid tackle. Yes, Amos for the stud that changes games over in coverage schemes. I'm sorry, Hodag guy. You didn't go with me. You went with those guys. But excellent answer there as well. Mike, stud cornerbacks make more impact on a team. Remember Dale Green and Champ Bailey? I do. Those guys are some of my favorites. But yeah, Joe Jacoby. There's so many. Trent Williams. I'm gonna go with this one we're split. In fact, our viewers are split. Lots of people going with the trenches. Lots of people going with the cornerbacks. It's a difference maker here. Real deal saying definitely going to choose the stud O-line. Well, let's move on to the next one here. And by the way, I forgot to mention this. If you have a this or that for us, hashtag this or that in the comment section with what you are presenting. Would you rather? Okay. So let us know in that comment section if you got one you'd like us to move on. I've got 6 of these to go in here. And I'm going to turn off the comments on the page here so we can read some of these.
Oh, this is easy.
Would you rather the team rush for 3,000 or more rushing yards, okay, but Jaden Daniels leads the team in rushing again? Or would you rather the team land around 2,500 rushing yards, but a running back leads the team?
It's a no-brainer for me. I'm going to running back lead the team. I don't care if we ran for 1,500 yards. Running back better be leading that rushing attack. It was cool that Jaden Daniels did it last year, but he kind of had to. B-Rod wasn't getting through the line. Eckler couldn't stay healthy enough, and C-Rod had some nice runs here and there, but majority was Jaden Daniels because he had to for those reasons, and also because the O-line put him in situations where he had to use his legs. Now, yes, some quarterback runs were designed, of course, because if you have Jaden Daniels, you better design some runs for him, but I don't want him to lead the team in rushing. That tells you a lot about your, one, offensive line, and two, running back room. So we need the running backs to do their job and lead the team in rushing. Their position is literally called a running back. The word running is in their position title, running back. So let them lead the team in running. That's my answer.
I don't understand this obsession with not wanting Jaden Daniels to run a lot.
Thank you.
He's special.
I want him to run a lot, but I don't want him to lead the team in rushing, bro.
Why not?
Because we have running backs for that.
Let me ask you this, Trev. Let me ask you this. Well, what is the biggest reason you don't want Jaden Daniels to be running a lot?
For one, his position is not built to be a running.
What does that mean? What does that mean? It's not built.
Right.
Explain that. What is not built?
Look at the hit he took last year.
Mm-hmm.
That hit looked like a tackle. Yeah, he got crunched up, but we didn't think it.
Are you talking the Carolina game where he was like 45 yards down the field?
Yeah, did you see what happened? We had to put Marcus Mariota in. Thank God it was the Panthers, or else we'd be screaming, "Oh, Mariota!" So I don't want to hear that. So that was just by luck of the team who were playing against. I don't want to put our franchise, now becoming face of the league, player in harm's way where he has to be the leading rusher when all you have to do is turn around and do this, and somebody can do that for you. Yeah, you got design runs for you. Yeah, you can get out of the pocket when you're getting chased by all these big old guys who are faster than you know what. But come on, man. We have running backs. Okay? Let them lead the team in rushing. I'm not saying don't let Jaden run a lot, but don't let Jaden be the only one contributing to the running back room when you have a running back room to do that job. If Jaden Daniels goes down, we got Marcus Mariota. If B-Rob goes down, luckily you should have a good number 2 coming in. Then we got Krusty Merritt coming in. We drafted for the running back room. So let them do their job and do that. We didn't draft for Jaden Daniels to be the leading rusher on the team. If we did, we would have got Tyler Shuck or Shador Sanders or somebody with our number 29 pick to back up Jaden Daniels because of what he does with his legs. Yeah, it's great. We want that. But I don't want him to lead the team in rushing. Do you have a running back room for that reason? That doesn't necessarily mean steer away from the running attack from Jaden Daniels, but you don't have to put it all on his back like you had to last year.
Brian Robinson missed more games due to injury than Jaden Daniels did. And Jaden Daniels ran the ball more times than Brian Robinson did.
Yeah.
So
and Jaden Daniels also, we all potentially held our breath and lost our life when we saw Jaden Daniels go down. We don't want that to happen again, do we, guys? When B-Rob got hurt, when B-Rob got shot and we didn't hold our breath and he came back. But when Jaden Daniels got crunched up, it was
yeah.
Okay.
No,
so
for sure.
I don't want that to happen. Okay.
He's much more valuable, right? As for your team. So if B-Rob goes down, you have other guys. Right. Whereas if Jaden Daniels goes down, but stop treating this as though he has more potential to be hurt. He doesn't. The quarterbacks who get hurt in the pocket more than they do out on the run. It's a proven statistical fact that they get hurt more in the pocket when they're vulnerable and just standing there than they do running down the field.
Where did he get hurt last year?
So just the injury part of it, I don't want to talk about. So I don't want that to be a reason.
Where did Jaden Daniels get injured last year?
Running down the field.
All right, next question.
Okay, so he did.
Well, there actually needs to be some clarification here. So because the chat's calling me out properly here. Deluxe pointing out and Doug saying, giving some stats kind of back it up here. But Deluxe is asking the question: if the running back room is by committee or 1A and 1B type situation, doesn't Jaden have a better chance to lead the team? The running back room should lead the team. And Doug pointing out 3 running backs at 750 and Daniels at 751 would mean Daniels leads the team, but the rushing attack was more evenly split. So
that's fine.
And I agree. I purposely I left it up as running back leads the team because who knows? Hodag here saying probably going to be the rookie in the right photograph. A little Jacory, a little Bill action, a little Bill love there. And it was, despite the fact that Brian Robinson missed more games than Jaden Daniels and only rushed a little bit. He ended up right behind Jaden Daniels. I mean, it wasn't a significant gap between the two. It wasn't like Jaden Daniels ran for 1,000 and Brian Robinson was next on the team with like 600 yards. They were pretty close in yardage. So the clarification I would like to add to this is that we do have a bell cow back in the 2,500 yards, whereas the 3,000 K rushing could be more of we have a really good rushing attack. Jaden Daniels is leading it. Okay. Does that change your opinion of things, Trev? Maybe Jaden Daniels runs for 1,000, but so does B-Rob.
Okay, that's fine. I just don't want it to be like a significant.
Yeah, you don't want want it to be one of these. Jaden Daniels is leading the team in rushing by a significant margin. Right, but would this change? Would your answer change if it were 1050 for Jaden Daniels, 1011 from Brian Robinson, 600 from Eckler, and 300 from
Damn. Going to the Super Bowl with those numbers.
Yeah, I need
3,000 yards was a Super Bowl winning team.
Yeah, I need my running back run to be 1,000 yards, if not at least daggone near close to it. But if Jaden Daniels is leading the team in rushing, that's cool. But I think my beef is rushing attempts. If he has more rushing attempts than our leading running back, I might be a little upset. Now that might not be all on purpose because he has to scramble and run and get out of the pocket sometimes, but it's tough. I just don't want him to run more than our running backs. You know what I mean?
I think in a perfect world, you absolutely want a healthy running game with your running backs leading the way. That's what football is, right? You have the run sets up the pass, right? You have a dominant run game, and then your quarterback has time to throw the ball because they're worried about the run. That's what football really is and what's been most successful over the years. But when you have a special guy back there, I don't want to limit him. I think that's what happened in the second half of the season last year, is at some point Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury said, F it. We got to let this guy loose. We got to stop babying him and stop worrying about him getting injured, because when he gets out in the open field, we're a totally different team. And defenses can't stop that. And that's what they did in the second half of the year. So I'll be okay if he leads the team in rushing if they get to a big rushing attack like 3,000 yards. But I think I would rather have that solid running attack. But man, it's just fun to watch JD5 running around people and past people. Remember that fourth down play against was it the Eagles? I think in that second game, it was like 4th and 11, and he got like 26 yards or something because he was juking dudes. And who's that linebacker that for Philly, the Zach Bond?
Yeah,
he made him look silly in the open field, right?
About Zach Bond.
Yeah, so there are just things that I enjoy watching with Jaden Daniels that I hope they don't mute by giving it to Brian Robinson for 3.7 yards per play. That just drives me crazy. If it ain't getting it done, get Jaden out in the open field however you can.
So just to clarify, Stoner, you're taking the 3,000 yards?
I am taking the 3,000 yards because that's a more fun team. I promise you that. With 3,000 rushing yards and JD5 he'd have to have close to 1,000 or over 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
That's a more fun team to watch than Brian Robinson getting you 1,200 yards.
The difference here is interesting. So last year, Washington finished with 2,600 yards rushing. So 2,500 is actually a step down, but it's still a top 5 rushing attack. 3,000 though is a whole nother level. It's where Philadelphia was, and they relied on one guy. And I do think that a scenario where Washington gets to 3,000 yards, it doesn't have NJD is leading the team. Doesn't have to mean he ran for like 1,500 or 1,200 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Just means that it was probably running back by committee, which given who we have, I'm not putting stock into Brian Robinson this year. Austin Eckler, I was down on last year. You guys told me he was a stud, and he didn't produce very much, 300 rushing yards.
Whoa, easy killer.
Whoa.
Easy killer.
He came here not trying to be a 3-down back. He came here to do what he did, and he did what he did.
600 all-purpose yards. Okay.
We'll take
I'm just saying maybe pump our brakes on Austin Eckler being a difference maker. He is a good player. I like him on the team, but he's not going to contribute to a 3,000 yard rushing team. He's not a third of that. Can we agree on that? He's not a third of a 3,000 yard. He's probably a quarter.
Take this. I'm not taking this Austin Eckler thing.
He's probably not even a quarter of that.
Probably not even a quarter. Right?
No, that's fine.
But that's not.
It
takes
more than a quarter to make $1. It takes more than a quarter to make $1, and he daggone sure provides that to make $1.
But you have to look at his running, and you also have to look at his returns that he provided for them last year. The kick returns.
Again, I like the guy on the team, but you guys tried to convince me that he was going to be his old self, getting 1,400 all-purpose yards, and he just wasn't anywhere near that.
Well, he got
but I am absolutely taking the 3,000 rushing yards. I think that is that's going to be the dynamic team. That's going to be a winning team running football. And that many yards tends to mean correlates. Doesn't mean that it has to, that you're winning games, but it correlates to a winning team because you're having to eat up the clock and everything. I'm taking 3,000 yards on this one. Most people sided with Trev, taking the safer 2,500 yard running back leading a team, which is fair. Again, top 3. Both of these were good things to pick here. Moving on.
Get a draft update?
Yeah, we're on Charlotte Hornets, pick number 4. The pick is in.
Well, they got Canoopel. So it's to pick 5 now. And Ace Bailey and Trey Johnson, one of those two is going to be a wizard. You might see Washington move up to 5 to get Bailey, just so nobody else moves up to 5 to get him.
Utah's not taking Bailey.
Utah's not taking Bailey?
Probably not.
All right. We'll see. All right. Sorry. I just wanted to, it's getting close.
It is getting pretty close. I have it up on like I said, I have it up on the side here.
What time does your team draft, Nathan?
Oh, we're not picking my Thunder aren't picking for a while here. So
I don't even know the Lakers pick either.
After winning the championship, as far as I'm concerned, I'm like, I'll just read about who they're drafting because this team, like, they've also got a bunch of picks and stuff. The Thunder are an insane team. Sorry, Wizards fans, if you're Wizards are, a team that I follow for the channel and stuff. I will say this: be happy you got the Presti, protege, but do kind of, you got to understand there's a process to it, and there might be a few years where you're just pulling out your hair because you're like, why not go for it right now? But moving back to our this or that here. Would you rather Terry McLaurin 1,400 receiving yards, or that Deebo Samuel 1,200 all-purpose yards?
I'm not going first on this one.
This one is an easy one for me, and I'll tell you why. 1,400 receiving yards for Terry McLaurin would solidify and would justify his $33 million a year that he's going to get. Right? So that's that's important. So I think that would really help. Also, just kind of in terms of where he is, because he's never had a big yardage year. If Debo, because he's going to get $33 million a year, or it's going to get 32, 31, 30, whatever it is, he's going to get $30 million per year. If Debo Samuel gives you 1,200 yards, all-purpose yards, you're going to have to sign him. And 1,200 yards is going to mean $28 million a year for a wide receiver who's younger than Terry, right? So as much as I want Debo Samuel to really help this team, I don't want him to have a monster year. You know what I want him to have, Nathan? I want him to have an Austin Eckler type year. All right. So I want him to, when he's there, to have some big plays, be effective, but miss some games because of injury, and really help this team when he's there, but not be this guy that you're like, okay, we need to go give him a whole bunch of money. Because and you can't let him walk away. If he gives you 1,200 all-purpose yards, you can't let him walk. So, and especially if Terry doesn't get those 1,400 yards and he's, 964 yards or something like that. I'm going with 1,400. This for Terry McLaurin.
Well, while Trev shakes his head there, JG taking the 1,400, Deluxe doing the 1,400, Doug, Debo 1,200. Terry will still find his yards. Luis 1,400 for 17 and 11.99 for Debo. Again, this isn't necessarily saying one is going to exclude, but we are trying to push you into, if only one existed, which one are you going to take here? And that same thing for KZH here, trying to split the difference, 1,500 each. I will say, before Trev picks, I did confirm Debo Samuel has only had 1,200 all-purpose yards once in his career. And that's when he had 1,400 yards receiving. He didn't have a lot of rushing yards that year. It was primarily the receiving side. He's come close. The 1,200 is actually, though, if you take a look at his average over 17 games, it's 1,000 yards receiving, and it is 200 plus yards rushing. So that's where it is. A healthy Debo Samuel might get you 1,200 all-purpose yards, but would you take that over Terry McLaurin getting 1,400, Trev?
Yeah, I would. And by the way, they're the same age. They're both.
No, 20. I think Debo's a year younger. I'm pretty sure he's a year younger. I mean, they're pretty much the same age.
I'm still taking 1,200 all-purpose yards. Like somebody said, Terry can get his yards. Terry getting 1,400 yards is cool, but we've kind of seen that, and before this year, it really didn't impact our season that much. I'm pretty sure we didn't win 10 games when he was over 1,000 yards. So if he gets 1,400.
1,400 is a big number, Trev. That's a big. What's the Redskins team record for receiving yards in a season? I bet it might not be more than 1,400. It might be close to that, because 1,400 used to be a difficult number to get to when you only played 16 games, or even going further back, 14 games. Nobody has it yet? Nobody can find it?
I'm going to look it up.
But yeah, so I'm going to go 1,200 all-purpose yards. Debo Samuel.
1,483, by the way.
What is it?
1,483. Any guess on who hit that mark?
Gary Clark.
You guys are way too old.
Oh, way too. That was more recently?
Mm-hmm.
Pierre Garçon. No?
Trev? Second guess?
I like that. Pierre Garçon answer. What is it? Deshaun Jackson.
Santana Moss.
2005.
Okay. What was our record then?
2005 was not a great.
What was the record, Nathan?
It was an okay season. I think we actually made the playoffs in 2005. Let me verify that again.
It's funny how anytime somebody has a good season, no matter what position they play, and Trev says, "Well, what was the record?" Well, that didn't help.
By the way, 10-6.
Yeah, they were 10-6, Trev.
10-6.
Yeah.
Okay. I still take
flamed out in the
I mean, that's like best record they had in 25 years, 10-6.
Do you guys want to take a guess who's second with 1436? You haven't mentioned his name yet.
Oh, wow. Noah McLaurin's high is
Ricky Sanders.
I don't think he's got to 1100. Ricky Sanders is a good choice. Are we going like way back?
We're going way back.
Yeah, are we going back to our I don't know, who is it?
In 1963, Bobby Mitchell.
Wow, Bobby Mitchell. Nice.
With 1436 on the list, 2 times in the top 5. Art Monk coming in at 5 with 1372. Pierre Garçon, guy you guys mentioned there, with 1346. And Gary Clark, 7, 8, and 9, all above 1200.
Tell me, Trev.
Taken, by the way.
I told you. I told you.
Bailey
Trey Johnson. I am a master.
I swear to goodness, if you do this 1 year,
I am a master predictor.
So, Trav, you're taking the 1200.
Yeah.
Stoner with the 1400.
Yep. What are you at, Nate?
JG, this is a fair question. Who gets more touchdowns? Terry at 1400, Debo at 1200. Probably Debo, I think, is probably going to get there. But I think that I'm going to go with the 1400 for a lot of the same reasons Stoner did. That's going to justify the contract that he's going to get. It's going to put to bed this noise about whether or not he's a true number one. We've seen a lot of the usage stats. We've seen a lot of Terry McLaurin just hasn't had a breakout season, and that's why they're waiting to see whether or not he is worth it, right? Because Amon St. Brown had 1,400-yard season, and everybody looks at him differently.
Yeah,
but outside of that season, he's not really stat-wise that much more impressive than a Terry McLaurin. So if Terry McLaurin gets 1,400, the whole world sees him differently, and that includes Deebo Samuel, who could provide 1,000 all-purpose yards, and that might be something like 850 receiving to whatever it is on the rushing side. Because I don't think you're not going to see 300 yards rushing from him. If you get 200, I think you're happy. So yeah. I'm going to take the 1,400 because that's a difference maker. That's where I stand on that one. It seems most people were in agreement also taking that 1,400. Moving to the defensive side, mentioned we were top 11 in sacks this past season. We were number 30 in rush defense. Mm-hmm. So would you take the jump to number 3 in sacks on the season, or would you take a top 10 rushing defense?
Yeah, I probably kind of let the cat out of the bag earlier when I talked about the defense, the rush defense. They absolutely have to get better. I would take, you can have top 3 in sacks. I'll just take top half of the league in rush defense. That's a massive improvement from 30th. If you go from 30th to 16th, that would be amazing. So top 10 in rush defense, absolutely. Again, I said this earlier. The only reason Washington didn't play in the Super Bowl was Saquon Barkley. He's still running. Last time I checked, he's still going. He had 500 and some odd yards in 3 games against Washington and 7 rushing touchdowns. You got to stop Saquon Barkley. He's not a flash in the pan. He didn't go there for 1 year. He just signed a new contract. You stop Saquon Barkley, you have a better chance to stop Philadelphia, because that means you got to put it on Jalen Hurts' shoulders, and he's shown he can do it, but Saquon Barkley is the one you got to stop. So, top 10 in rush defense. Easy one for me.
Trev?
Yep. Yeah, I'm saying top 10 in rush defense.
What would the numbers have to look like to make this a close battle? Because everybody in the chat's agreeing it's got to be the top 10 rush defense, and especially when you're talking about how much of an improvement that is from 30th to 10 is – 20 teams that you've just surpassed. So that's a big difference. but top 3 in sacks is you're talking, 100 plus sacks in the season. Wouldn't that be pretty good too? I mean,
no, I'm okay because I'm pretty sure the Lions were a top 5 in sacks last year, and look where they ended up last season, losing to us. So I'd rather take until we don't play Saquon Barkley twice a year. I'm going to go with top 10 rush defense every time.
All right.
And next
year I'll try about getting a pass rusher as much as I'm all about that, getting a Trey Hendrickson and all that. Yeah, I would love that. But Saquon Barkley, he's the one who beat us, not Jalen Hurts.
And let's not forget about the other studs in the NFC. Detroit, they run the ball, right? And then you have even San Francisco, if they come back to where we expect them to be with McCaffrey, they run the ball.
Green Bay runs the ball, Josh Jacobs.
Green Bay runs the ball.
Pittsburgh runs the ball.
Well, I'm just talking about NFC, but
teams are loading up to run the ball. So
yeah.
Giants run the ball.
All right, next year's this or that. I'll think of something different here. Special teams one for you as the last one for me, and we have a this or that from the viewers. Don't forget you can get a this or that in there as well. Just put this or that and then the 2 options, and I'll read it off here in a little bit. But would you rather have 31 yards a kickoff return or 10 yards a punt return? Both are 31 yards is probably top 3, if I recall correctly from the stats I was looking at, and 10 yards is probably closer to like top 8. Like it's pretty good. It's kind of hard to see because the punt returns were all over the place because a couple big punt returns and you had a great per punt average, but you might have the kickoffs were a little bit more consolidated and consistent because those guys are constantly getting that. So Trev, what are you taking? You taking the consistent 31 yards on a kickoff return, or are you taking the 10 yards for a punt return?
I'm gonna go 31 yards on kickoff return. Why? Because I want us to have good field position if we're receiving a kickoff for some reason. We shouldn't be receiving a kickoff at all unless it's start of the game or halftime, but it will be some kickoffs that we have to receive, but realistically. So yeah, I'm doing that because I want to, even though we've seen what Jane Daniels can do with his magic back there from way down deep or whatever, I just want to make things simpler for the guy and see how it works out. So let's go with 31 yards of kickoff return and have some good field position rather than 10 yards of punt return. 10 yards of punt return, that's not even exciting to watch. You talk about highlighting the team fun to watch. Jalen Lane, we have a 4-2, 4-3 guy back there, and he gets 10 yards. Then what we draft him for? So go 31 yards kickoff return for my this or that pick.
I think kickoff returns are going to be a little bit more important because they did move the kick or the penalty for kicking it into the end zone. They've given the offense 5 more yards, so there's going to be a lot more opportunities for the kick returns now. So I find that to be a little bit more important than the punt returns. I'm actually okay with Antoine Randall catching the ball and running around in circles and getting 2 yards. Just catch the ball on punt returns. That's all I ever
after the amount of muffs that we've seen, I'm a big fan of the fair catch. Just
exactly.
Don't lose yardage. I can't believe another year in a row, Stoner. Another year in a row.
He did it.
Did I did it? Do I did it again? Trey Johnson.
Insane.
I'm telling
How did you do that?
I'm telling you, when I got a gut feeling about something, it's usually true.
Let's get through this or that, and then we can move on to that Wizards pick, which we told you didn't have to watch the draft. Stoner was going to spoil it for you. So
but I just need my punt returner to just not fumble the ball. That's all. And don't let it roll 30 yards downfield. Just catch the ball. Don't turn it over.
Right.
On fumbles. That's all I really care. You'd like to have Brian Mitchell back there, right? You'd like to have Devin Hester back there, but really you just need somebody to hold on to the ball. And I was always okay with Antoine Randall never going anywhere because he always caught the ball. He was he didn't muff it very much.
It would be nice to have something flashy. I was surprised 10 yards for punt return was still really impressive. I try to stay away from bulk stats because Yeah, I really don't want Washington to have a lot of kickoff return opportunities, and I'd much rather have punt return opportunities.
Yes.
But with we're going to need to see some more movement on that kickoff return because, as Stoner mentioned, the ball's going to be placed at the 35 if it's kicked out of the end zone. So more opportunities to return the ball. We saw Washington liked to return it more than other teams last year as well, because they were sending out Luke McCaffrey quite often. So I know our people are going to be distracted, but I did promise if you got a this or that in there, I was going to get it. And Mike, get a special teams one as well. This or that. Would you rather have a stud punter or a stud return guy?
Well, we already have a stud punter, so I'm going to go with stud punter. He's done a lot of good for us in these years that he's been with us, pinning the pin, within the 10-yard line and deep. Not so much here lately, but within the past 5, 6, 7 years. Oh, yeah. Stud punter. Stud return guy. A Devin Hester. Phew.
Deshaun Jackson in his
prime. Our defense has got to be pretty studly if we have to have a stud return guy, because the more opportunities he gets back there, the better he'll be. And that's because our defense is holding teams to. Oh, man. Mike H., what a question. Stud punter, because we already have one. Final answer for me.
That is a tough one to kind of choose because, a stud punter can obviously pin the team back, right? But a stud return guy can get you out of those tough field position holes. Right. So that is a tough one.
That's hard.
It's more exciting to have a stud return guy, but it is more effective. I think it's more effective to have a stud punter.
I think that's fair. JG here, actually, more punt returns is probably indicative of success than kickoff returns, but Nathan just said that. Yeah. Gonna keep that in mind here. Stud punter. When you're trying to milk out a clock or bury a team deep in their own territory with a chance to get the ball back when you need it, it's key. Okay. That's fair.
Thank you, Yam.
Mm-hmm. Doug, return guy. Big plays change games. Yeah. JG, our punter is just sideline decoration that occasionally holds an extra point. And KZH going with that as well. Silly question. We don't punt, remember? We don't punt. As much as I agree in the sense that the stud punter is probably more of a weapon overall when you're talking about special teams play, because you can kind of negate a stud return guy by opting not to kick it to him. Kicking it out of bounds, kicking it away from him. Trying your best. You could try, to negate. Good special teams and stud return guys will still find their way. Okay. But a stud punter just consistently will pin those, get the defense to pin the ears back. That being said, the reason why I kind of wanted to read JG's first one was because punt returns, if we have more punt returns, that's more successful than kickoff returns. But in that same light here, are we going to be using our punter, or are we going to be using a return guy? Because if we're using our return guy more, if we're saying that our offense is clicking, we're not punting a lot. Don't you want the stud return guy? Because your defense is stopping more and you're getting the ball into better field position, like we're saying. Holistically speaking, if I'm building team, I'm going to get that stud punter over a stud return guy. I need a serviceable one, like we talked about with the punt returns. Just fair catch it, don't lose any yards. Kickoff return, get to at least the 35 and you're moving. Okay. But a stud punter can be a difference maker. But in this particular team, with Jaden Daniels, with Dan Quinn, always going for it on fourth down. How many games, Stoner, did Tressway not have a punt?
3 games where they had 0 turnovers and 0 punts. So I assume it's just those 3 games. But also Montana, Peyton Manning, Patrick Mahomes, and I forgot who the fourth guy was.
You said Joe Montana?
Montana, Manning,
Brady.
Those 4 guys combined had 2 games where they had 0 punts and 0 turnovers. So, yeah, last year they had 3 games with Tress didn't even come on the field. I got Trey Johnson on my mind, apparently.
You do, and this will end our Would You Rather, and we'll all have Trey Johnson on our mind. We're also going to still be talking Commanders, so stick with us, but we will be talking about the Washington Wizards, also picking Trey Johnson. More importantly, our man Stoner, like 4 or 5 years in a row now.
That's 5.
Absolutely nailing the pick. And we have receipts. You can check early in the video. He said Trey Johnson before that pick even came in. He picked it yesterday in the group chat.
Yeah, he did.
What happened to Nathan? Is it me, Trev?
No, it's Nathan.
Nathan froze? Uh-oh.
Yeah. I don't know what to do.
All right, so here we're gonna go over to the cool down here in just a second. We got to figure this out here. Going to the cool down.
Woo!
All right, welcome back to Ref the District. We're gonna have to get Nathan out of it. Nope, not that one. What happened to Trev?
I'm still here.
Let's see. Hang on. Let's remove that. Let's bring me. Maybe I'll do that and then go. There we go. How's that?
Okay, that's cool.
I don't know what happened to Nathan. Probably.
I know he just froze.
He's in Oklahoma, so maybe they got a tornado that just tore down his house. But since he's not here, Trev, let's talk NBA, right? Let's talk about NBA draft.
Okay.
Before we get into managing expectations, of course. Mm-hmm. But of course, make sure if you're just getting here, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Trev, NBA draft. First of all, who your team is the Lakers?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Who do you think their Lakers are taking this year?
Hopefully where do they take? I don't even know, bro. I don't even didn't even have the draft tonight till this morning, so I don't know. I don't really care. I didn't really watch a lot of college basketball to know a lot of players in this draft anyway, but hopefully a center because that's what we need.
Yeah, that's true. So the Wiz take Trey Johnson. He's a small forward / guard from the University of Texas, 1 year at Texas. Like him a lot, Trev. I have been watching him quite a bit, and I think he's going to be a really good fit for this team, for the Wizards, who have been doing some wheeling and dealing in the last couple of days, right? They traded away Jordan Poole for Kelly Olynyk, who if you're a Wizards fan, you can't stand him. I don't like him at all, but whatever.
No, you don't.
And CJ McCollum.
Yeah.
Right. And I think they gave up the 40th pick in this year's draft as well to get rid of Jordan Poole. Yeah. So now what they have on their roster is you've got CJ McCollum, Chris Middleton, Marcus Smart, Kelly Olynyk, and then you've got all these young guys and all these
Alex
draft
Sarr,
picks.
Bilal,
Bub. And so what they're doing, Trev, and I'm not sure that I really like this, what they're doing is they're setting up for a run in 2026, a run at the big guy, whoever that big guy is.
Free agent?
Right? Free agent. Because all those contracts that I just mentioned
are expiring.
Done.
Yeah.
Right? That's why they got rid of Poole.
Right.
So that they could, because he just signed a big deal last year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they got rid of him, and now you've got sitting there, you've got the McCollum, Smart, Middleton, Olynyk. All of those contracts are coming off the books.
Yeah.
$100 million in cap space in 2026.
Yeah.
They're going to suck again this year.
They'll win more games.
They'll win more games. Yeah. Because, CJ McCollum's a good player.
Yeah,
Chris
I like
Middleton's
CJ.
a good player.
Yeah.
Marcus Smart is a guy I've always loved. He's not a big three type guy.
No.
But he is a guy that every team really needs.
Yeah.
So those guys are going to help you win games.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
But you've still got the Bub Carringtons, the Keyshawn George, Alex Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly, Corey Kispert, who they signed to a big deal, not a real big deal. So that's what the Washington Wizards are going to try and do.
Yeah.
Is somebody going to come here in 2026? Nobody has ever come to this team since Gilbert Arenas on a free agent deal.
Yeah, I think it's starting to become more attractive. I think you got to keep one of those veterans. I don't know if you should get rid of all. Definitely get rid of Kelly. You can afford to get rid of Marcus Smart. He hasn't been too healthy this past 4 years. Great guy, great defense, but he's not the Marcus Smart that you went and got him for.
Yeah.
CJ McCollum, I still like him, and I still like Chris Middleton. It's weird to see Chris Middleton in DC. It's so weird to see that. But so keep one of those two, let the other two go, and you've got an attractive young core that maybe a veteran wants to come help and play with. Now, you kind of want it to be how Houston is. Houston got rid of their veteran players. They have a nice young core. They were the 2 seed last year. Kevin Durant was like, I want to go play with them. They got a nice young core that I could help, whatever. He's also mentioned San Antonio with Victor and De'Aaron Fox out there. They've got some other younger guys. So I think the key is to get younger so you can be attractive to these veterans on Supermax deals or top-notch $50 to $100 million guys that want to come play for DC. So, it's going to suck this year. You're probably not going to make the playoffs. You'll win more than 18 games. You really hope Trey Johnson is not another Jordan Davis, who everybody was so high on when they drafted him out of Wisconsin. And look where he's at now. So high hopes for Trey Johnson. It seems like all you guys do is draft guards. It wasn't the guard, but it seems like you guys just draft guards. I don't know, but you're just going to have to go through some growing pains to get a guy to come play with your young core. And you've got, like I said, a nice young core right now. Get rid of some other veterans and then go this year winning 30 games to 35 games. And then
it's got to happen at some point for the Wizards. They have to stop with this nonsense of getting rid of all these players for nothing and tanking. Right. I mean, let's just call it what it is. It's tanking so that they can acquire all these draft picks. But at some point, you have to stop that. And a lot of people point to Oklahoma City that's the model that the Wizards are doing, right? Because the guys who are running the program came from Oklahoma City. The GM and the president of basketball are Oklahoma City guys under Presti, right? And Presti obviously showed that they can do it. The problem with that comparison to me is that we don't have an SGA.
Right. They've already see that. Yes.
We don't have that.
Right.
We might have the Chet Holmgren with Alex Sarr. We might have the Jalen Williams with maybe Trey Johnson can be that Jalen Williams, that high draft pick who turns into an all-star. Maybe. Yeah. We'll see how that goes, right? We have the Lou Dorts and the Alex Carusos and the Kayvon Wallace, those role players. We have all those role players.
Right.
Washington doesn't have
that star.
They don't have that star. And you have to get that. And oh, by the way, Oklahoma City only sucked for 2 years.
Right.
They didn't suck for like 4, 5, 6 years, which is what it looks like Washington is leaning towards.
Right.
This upcoming season will be year number 3 of winning less than 30 games, probably. And so at some point, they have to
go get a star
and get a star, not a draft pick, right?
Yeah.
Not a. I hope this guy becomes a star. No, they need to go out and get a superstar, not a star, a superstar.
Yeah, you need to.
Because that SGA, if SGA doesn't happen, then Oklahoma City doesn't become what they've become. They'd still be struggling all the way up.
Yep.
Now, nobody knew SGA was going to be SGA when they traded for him, right? Because that was just part of the whole, I think, the Paul George deal.
Yeah, it was.
When they traded Paul George out to the Clippers and they wanted SGA. And some people think this AJ Johnson, have you seen any of him for the Wizards?
Yeah.
That they got in the from Portland, I believe, who was the guy who was just sitting on their bench or whatever, and he came in and did some things. So maybe he's their SGA. I doubt it. But at some point, man, they have to make that move.
Yeah.
And they have not yet made that move.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it will be in 2026. I don't know who the free agents are in 2026.
Me neither.
But I'm tired of the mediocrity here in Washington with the Wizards. All right, let's get back to the Commanders.
Yes, sir.
Managing expectations.
Okay.
Right? The expectations, Trev. What? Let me ask you, and let me ask people in the chat. Let me ask you, what are the expectations for the Wizards, or for the Commanders in 2025?
Win.
What does that mean? What does win mean, though? Does that mean that it's Super Bowl or bust? Is that what you're telling me, Trev?
Ooh. And that makes it Super Bowl or bust can enter the chat because of what we did last year and how far we were right there, literally the game before the Super Bowl. So I can see why some fans may say Super Bowl or bust. I'm not going to go to that expectation just yet.
Because Trev, Super Bowl or bust means that you had a bad year because you didn't win the Super Bowl. If you don't,
I know, and I don't think that we had a bad year by any means at all because we've had 30 years of bad years. Okay, so I think that we weren't supposed to be at the NFC East. I mean, the NFC Championship last year.
That's right.
Not supposed to.
That's right.
I'm gonna be real. I might lose some fans. Whatever. I don't care. I'm gonna be real. We were not a dominant team last year. Jaden Daniels was a dominant player, and our offense was somewhat dominant, but we were not a dominant team. Yeah, we put up some points, but we didn't put anybody in the ground that was of substantial. You know what I mean? Yeah, the Panthers, the Cardinals. I mean, we barely got by the Saints, but they were a bottom team. The Titans, we did what we were supposed to do against those teams, but we weren't beating teams dominantly. We were scraping by some bad teams. We were depending on JD5 to come back and make a comeback. We relied on our kicker one game because we couldn't score a touchdown. So it's not like we were out here being like the Bills or the Ravens or the Chiefs or the Packers at a time. Regular season dominant teams where it's like, there's no question. We don't have to have mathematics to happen for us to get in the playoffs. We just know from the naked eye, they're going to the playoffs because they're so dominant. They're always so. That's why I'm not doing Super Bowl or bust, because last year was a fluke for us to get the NFC Championship. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and say that it was a fluke. We weren't supposed to be there. Yeah, we were good. We had JD5 Rookie of the Year, but nobody in this fan base thought we were supposed to go in that direction entering the last season. We thought, we got Jaden Daniels. We'll win 7 games. We'll win 9 games. We might make a wild card appearance. Nah, we got there with 12 wins in the NFC Championship. So I'm taming it down from Super Bowl or bust to postseason appearance again. I'll be cool with that. If we get there one and done, that's cool because of where we've been for so long. The expectation is just win a game, and we did that last year. So now let's just consistently win is expectation. Consistently win.
Yeah, and the NFL or sports in general, but the NFL for sure is not always this just linear progression. You don't always just go, okay, we won 12 games in NFC East or NFC Championship game, so that means obviously we're going to do better, right?
No.
We'll have a better record. I mean, just look at the Eagles when they lost the Super Bowl, right? A couple years ago, and they thought, okay, we're going here. They started out like 10-0 or 10-1, whatever it was, and then flamed out at the end and got knocked out in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah.
And then came back and then won the Super Bowl, right? So it's not always just this slow, steady climb. It can be, but it's usually not like that. But in Washington's case, they have set themselves up.
Yeah.
Adam Peters has set themselves up that it basically is Super Bowl or bust.
Ooh.
because you have so many guys on 1 or 2 year contracts. If you just think about some of your bigger guys, Laramie Tunsil's only under contract for 2 more years, right? Biotish, 2 more years. Mariota's on some of the Mariota's not really a factor, but Brian Robinson's on the last year. Austin Eckler's on his last year. And then you go on to the defensive side, and effectively, Deron Payne's on his last year. Bobby Wagner's on his last year. Frankie Louvu's only got 2 years left. Lattimore's only got 2 years left, and none of his money's guaranteed. Percy Butler is in year 4. Quan Martin's in year 3, so he's got 2 years left. Right.
So
they've done this purposely, right? So they have traded away draft picks to get Laramie Tunsil and Deebo Samuel, who, by the way, on his last year of his deal, and Marshawn Lattimore. They gave up draft picks for these guys because they saw what Jaden Daniels can do on a rookie contract.
Right.
So they've set themselves up that it's basically for them, they've got to win the Super Bowl because do you think Bobby Wagner's going to be back next year? After this season?
Like, if we don't make the Super Bowl?
Yeah. Do you think him at 35, 36 years old is going to be back?
Or he's got other things going. Right,
You've got a 2-year window.
Zach Ertz last year.
Right. He's on a 1-year deal. That's right.
Yeah.
You got a 2-year window to get this done because you don't have this huge, all these young guys. You've got a couple. You've got a few.
Right. We don't have a young core guys we brought guys that want to win now. You're right.
We got win now guys.
On the tail end of their careers.
Right. So
you're right.
I think the expectation, at least of the team, is we got to win now.
Yeah.
But as fans, are we going to be disappointed if they don't win the Super Bowl this year? I know it's hard to say it now. It's hard to look at it now and say, I won't be disappointed. But think how you're going to feel after they lose a first-round playoff game to the Vikings or something and J.J. McCarthy.
And I think it'll be more tame just because of what you just said, all those guys who are leaving within a year or two. I really didn't have time to get attached to the guys because we do. That's what we do as fanatics. We get attached to some players. We do.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would because like you just mentioned, all those guys are 1 or 2 deals left. So they're gone either way, either into retirement, more money, change of scenery. I mean, some might stay for 1 more year because we went to the Super Bowl, but I personally won't be disappointed because some of these guys are going to be gone next year regardless. So, let's do it for them. It's pretty much just that Adam Peters is doing this, has built this season for the veterans on the squad. That's what he did. He said, look, if you want a chance to go after a ring before you finish your career, finish this thing out, come to Washington for a year or 2 years. That's exactly right. So that's exactly what he did. So, I'm not going to be disappointed if we don't go Super Bowl. The team might, some veterans might because of who our roster is, those 1 to 2 year players. So as a fan, I will be disappointed, but the team, they probably will be just because of.
Well, like I said, I'm going to ask you again after they lose a first-round game to the Vikings.
Yeah, I'll be upset. Right? It's like, but I'm not going to be like down in the dumps. Don't talk to me. I don't want to be bothered until next season. Get Adam Peters out of there. Fire Joe Witt. I'm not going to. Bro, we ain't been this good in 30 years, okay? I'm going to be a realistic person. If we get first round and knock off, that's cool. We got there. We never knew what it felt like to get there in 30 years. We knew that we weren't getting there after week 3 in the past 30 years. We knew we weren't getting there. So I'm going to be cool. I'm not selfish like that personally. I'll be cool. Postseason, though. We got to make the postseason.
I think
I can't accept not making the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with that. If you don't make the playoffs, then it's a disaster.
Yes,
I agree with that. Welcome back, Nathan.
Yeah,
we assumed a tornado got you.
Not quite. Yeah. There are storms tomorrow, but today just a good old fashioned rolling brown up, but you guys did a good job.
Oh, yeah.
I think what it was the basketball gods didn't want the Thunder fan talking about the Wizards, especially because that Thunder fan is also an Oklahoma Sooner fan, and the Wizards picked a Texas Longhorn.
Oh,
Probably
wow.
best that I stayed away from that particular conversation.
Wow.
But in the manage of the expectations, it's kind of funny because it is 100% the expectations are make the playoffs, win the football games, build and improve. But as you mentioned, Stoner, progression isn't linear. And NFL often stands for not for long. And that's not just players' careers, but also ups and downs. You know, Washington, I saw a stat recently when it came to teams that had huge boosts from one year to the other, that wasn't maintained. Washington had, I think, like the 8th or 9th most like wins after like going from 4 to 12 is huge. And like one of the biggest jumps over the course of NFL history. Mm-hmm. Statistically speaking, there's a regression to the mean, and those teams that saw that 1 year jump then lost on average, I want to say like 3 more games. So would the 9-win season be exciting? If you win if 9 wins in the playoffs feels different than 9 wins and missing the playoffs.
Yeah. I was telling Stoner, I don't want to have to go through mathematics to get in the playoffs, but if it comes down to it and we have a chance, yes.
How great was it to have the playoffs sealed early and know that we're just playing for seeding now?
Right.
Which I thought was a great difference, right? We talked about it in November. We were talking about playoff seedings in November and not mock drafts because people are draft picks rather. Where are you going to land in the draft? I do think it'd be nice to stay a perpetual winner because, as Yam here says, it's what the doctor ordered, and it does so much for a fandom. And that's kind of that's why this topic came up as managing expectations, because we're not used to it. So what we're used to is losing. So what happens if Washington hits a 3-game skid to where that they don't look like a good football team?
Yeah.
How many people wanted to bail after Jaden Daniels goes down against Carolina? Yeah. And Marcus Mariota lit those Panthers up, but we heard it was just the Panthers. And then Jaden Daniels plays mediocre football for 3 games, and Washington struggled, and people are like, yep, this is it, we're done, it's no good. And then he just rattles off a bunch of victories and looks like the phenomenal player that he is. Speaking of Jaden Daniels, the expectations is he's slump proof. What if he finally has one of those games? Patrick Mahomes has had one of those games. Unfortunately, one of those games also happened to come in the Super Bowl for him. Yeah. And so what happens? Yeah. What happens when? Right? Not if, when Jaden Daniels looks like an average QB.
Yeah.
What happens when Washington loses back-to-back games? Maybe it's not this season, but probably, they've got a tough schedule. If they're 3-5. And I should probably look at the schedule to see if 3-5 is, it's realistic because it's the NFL, but which 5 teams are you losing to in the first 8 games? Who knows? But if they're 3-5, how do fans react to that? Because despite winning 12 games in a season, Washington didn't see a lot of fans in attendance. The games felt different. Not because the attendance levels were high, but just because finally home fans were buying tickets and not the away fans. And partly because you were playing against some stinker teams, towards the end of the season. So we've talked about this earlier last year, and Adam Peters we trust and Dan Quinn we trust. It was just like, just how far are people willing to? Because people were willing to jump off that ship early last year, and now you're coming off of an NFC championship game where you got shellacked. It was close up to a certain point. I do believe if there wasn't for that final fumble, that the game might not have completely gotten out of hand. I mean, it was a 10-point game after that touchdown.
There is at some point where, kind of like all that you've been saying, Nathan, is that it's not going to be all roses next year, and it's not, or this season, and it's not going to be, as we talked about earlier, not every one of these draft picks is going to work out. Not every one of these free agent signings are going to work out. There's going to be some misses. It's just what happens. The greatest GMs in the world have misses. Howie Roseman's got misses. Kansas City guys they all got misses. Adam Peters has misses when he was the assistant GM in San Francisco. And when that starts happening on top of the losing, if you're losing because, as an example, I'm not saying this will happen, because Trey Amos looks like Emmanuel Forbes out there, then you really start questioning everything. And if you start losing, you start looking at all these things and start asking, is this really where this team is supposed to be? Or was last year just a whole big fluke and we're right back to where we started? Hopefully not.
You mentioned age, Stoner. And that is that's one of those things that is only going to be important if the team's losing. As long as the team keeps putting up W's.
Yeah.
I don't care that they're the oldest team. I don't care that their average age is over 30. I do agree with you. It's by design. My look on it is these contracts for 1 and 2 years and everything, they have to accumulate draft picks. I know they've spent a couple of the draft picks, but large in part that's because they got someone special and they're like, we do have an opportunity here. We're playing better football than, probably most people expected. So they're trying to strike on that opportunity, but Adam Peters is still trying to balance out the long term because he doesn't stay employed if they miss the playoffs multiple years, right?
Well, yeah. And Trev and I were talking about that while you were away, Nathan, is that this team is not built for the long haul right now. There's nobody on this team that is under contract after 2026 other than, I believe, John Bates and Sam Cosmi. That might be it. Well, and Jaden Daniels. And Terry McLaurin when he signs his. Nobody else is under contract. Everybody else is either on a 1 or 2 year deal or on their rookie deals from this year and last year. And there weren't that many rookies that they drafted, especially this year. They only had 5. This is not a team that's built for the long haul. This is a team that's built to win right now. And so they better, or you're going to see somebody saying, well, let's look to next year's draft. Oh, we only got 5 picks again next year? What are we doing here? What is Adam Peters doing? And then you just start getting all those rumblings.
Again, that only matters
if you're not winning.
Losing. Yeah,
that's right.
If they're losing, that's when that matters. But as long as they're winning and you're not having, you can find where those replacements. And so there's a balance to it. I personally, I'm wearing actually an appropriate shirt for this one here. I survived the Dan Snyder era is the shirt I have on. And I'm in for the long haul, penny for a pound guy, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, if they go on a 3-5 game losing streak, I still will believe that they can turn around. Injury to an important player. Still going to be thinking that this team has the pieces to maneuver and do something special. But I understand I'm setting myself up for that. I'm setting myself up to be hurt.
For the letdown.
Mm-hmm.
Man, now you got me all nervous, Nathan. Why are you doing this to me? It's a good time to do it now in the off season when nothing's going on. So
we'll be fine. Bring on training camp.
The catfish here called me Nate and said Nathan. We'll let that one pass, Cat. But Commanders are not starting 3-5. Smell no. This offseason we revamped and we're bringing the heat on teams we're facing 100%. And this This is where everybody's at. It's a positive time in the off season. And I think that we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit, because we still have a lot of time before football starts, and every team is ecstatic right now. Every team thinks that they're a good football team. Maybe not all the fans of those teams believe that, but every football team believes that they're putting themselves in position to be a better team this year than last year. So the question isn't about that. The question is about, where will we be when the team doesn't live up to the expectations that we're starting, that we've set for ourselves in here. Deluxe, I agree with you here. Deluxe saying the concern about short contracts is overstated. It's the way of the NFL nowadays. After rookie deals, very few sign for deals longer than 3 years. Most are 1 or 2 year contracts. It is very true, Deluxe, that a long-term deal is for 4 or 5 years is usually player friendly, not team friendly. But that being said, there's also on the player side, they like those short contracts because then they are back on, they get to reset the market. So there's kind of a balance between both. One, you want those long-term commitments, but then you also don't want those long-term commitments because they turn out to be bad so often.
It can be.
For either player or team turn out to be bad. So I agree with you. I think that the short contracts thing, again, I think it's by design so that way Adam Peters can kind of churn this team and get the players they need to stay competitive. The thing is, he does have to continue hitting on those players.
Well, and also what it says in there, it says after draft picks. Well, the better teams have those rookies on 3, 4, or 4/5 year deals. And that's where you sort of earn your stripes as a GM, is that you can have these guys on these longer contracts and fill in with the veterans. But this team's not doing that. They don't have that many draft picks. When you look at some of these other teams that have gotten to the top, it's usually because they've drafted really well and filled in with veterans on those 1 and 2 year deals. So, but you got to have a lot of draft picks to be able to do that. And Washington doesn't have that right now. So I think that's where they're at a little bit of a disadvantage, because when they do have to restock their roster, like they did this year, and especially next year, they've got to bring in a lot of guys, and you can't necessarily get the higher priced guys, the bigger names, or the better players, if you will, because they don't have enough money, because they have so many positions to fill.
To end this more on a positive note, Washington, as long as they keep improving, keep winning, and keep churning out talent from the draft picks, we'll start to get more draft picks from comp picks or from these Deebo Samuel, 1,200 all-purpose yards. If we don't sign him, somebody else is signing.
We lost him again.
So there's...
Wait, he's back. Are you back? Oh, yeah, you're back.
It's going to be that bit of a time, but there is good things on the horizon to include here on Ref the District. So do yourself a favor, hit that like button, hit that sub button, share this content with other people so they can join us live, as we're live every Wednesday here on YouTube and Facebook, 7:30 Eastern. We're bringing you position battles on Monday, so make sure that you're checking out that. It was the defensive line this past weekend. I think we're moving to linebackers, Stoner. Does that sound about right? So
linebackers on Monday.
Linebackers on Monday. Make sure, again, that you're joining us here for the conversation. I'm Nathan. That's the Stoner. That's Trev.
Hey.
District. We had some great conversations with you, our viewers. So make sure that you join us again next week. But until next time.
5 straight years, Trev. You got to listen to me when I tell you who the Wiz are drafting.
Be a fan.